And we are back. I'm really excited about our next panel discussion. It's called Technology to the Rescue, and I can't wait to hear what my colleague John Blair has to say about what that panel is going to be and what we can expect. So, John, over to you.
Thank you, Julie. Before we begin our panel, I'd like to do a quick poll. Since March of 2020, have you started using any new technologies or platforms? This will be a yes or no question. We have a big group here, so we'll give you about 45 seconds to answer. And just briefly, on this panel, we'll have a partner at a law firm, the head of a full-service creative agency, the president and CTO of a government contractor, and the owner of a sales enablement and marketing firm. So they're going to cover a lot of ground in our 45 minutes together today. And let's see what the poll results are. Just give you a few more seconds for the results, and then we can go ahead and get into our panel. So sizable portion of you, 86%, believe that actually you've used since March 2020, started using some new technologies and platforms. So this is a good panel discussion for us to have today. We've assembled a panel from Fairfax County businesses who've used technology to remain resilient during the past few months. They will talk about how they are building on their use of tech over the last few years to position themselves for success. Each of these 4 panelists will make a brief presentation, and we'll have time to answer one question after their presentation. And then we'll have the presentation and Q&A at the conclusion of all 4 presentations. Now I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first speaker. Tom Dunlap is a partner in the law firm Dunlap, Bennett & Ludwig, which has one of its locations just downstairs from our offices in Tysons. They also have a presence in Leesburg, London, Puerto Rico, and Toronto, Canada, among other locations. Tom spent 9 years as an Army officer, has an instrument pilot's license, an MBA, and has an MS in biotech. Tom's practice focuses on patent, trademark, trade secret, commercial, entertainment law, business and government contracts, disputes, litigation, and transaction. He is no stranger to public speaking, as he's also appeared on national TV and radio, including Fox and NPR. Looking forward to hearing you speak, Tom.
Thanks. Thanks very much, John. So I think, and John, do the slides just appear on the screen?
Yes, I mean, just say next slide, then you can go ahead.
Great. Yeah, so next slide, please. So thank you. So really, this is just an overview slide, but what I'm going to talk about briefly is kind of my experience and our law firm's experience with transforming from a traditional law firm. And as you may or may not know, law firms are probably 10 to 15 years behind most industries when it comes to what I guess we call digital transformation. In other words, taking things from literally pen and paper, not just being in the office and using server-based technology and PC-based technology and moving to the cloud, but literally having documents, file cabinets, and even sort of shockingly an oral tradition of conveying information. And so the story kind of starts roughly 19 years ago when I left a firm that I was working at, and a partner of mine and I both had been in the Army together at some point, started a new firm. And the idea behind the new firm was that we could kind of have a lifestyle that we wanted to have while we worked. We could work anywhere at any time, any way we wanted. And B, to have kind of a different culture to the firm. And I think digital transformation and culture kind of go hand in hand. And so with that in mind, we started the practice. And then from 2001 until today, we're now about 75 lawyers, and we're in, you know, as John mentioned, Tysons Corner is our biggest office, but Tysons Corner, Richmond, Leesburg, Beijing, New York, Tulsa, Oklahoma, all over the place. And the reason we were able to grow and scale is because we transformed from a traditional law practice, and the law we practice is still traditional and still law, but into something that is kind of cloud-based and digital and is a work from anywhere concept. And so that's allowed us to grow, expand not only the type of law we practice. I was principally an IP lawyer, Now we have an M&A group, and we have a China patent team in Beijing that works collaboratively with our teams in the US, all over the place. So, so that's just kind of the summary of the firm and the history and the what's and wherefores. Next slide, please. So this is the concept behind what we decided to do with the firm. We decided that to be efficient and competitive, we really needed three things. And first was we needed what was called a software backbone. And there are a couple good books about what this means. But right now, even today, and we've been working at this for a while, not only do you need to transform from pen and paper, but we needed to figure out a way not to have 50 software programs. It kind of strange, but even young lawyers who are out of law school only a couple years, are 10 years behind their peers when it comes to using technology in many cases. And part of that is just how law firms work and how the practice of law has worked in the industry. But we decided that one of the things, and we're still working on this today desperately, is that instead of having 15 or 20 applications, I think across the firm, we're still at 15 or 20 applications, but we were at 30. We were using so many different applications to do so many little pieces of our transformation that one of our driving goals is to have a single software backbone. The second thing was to have lawyerless operations, and this is where the culture ties into digital. Most law firms have lawyers deciding who sits where, what desks they buy, what real estate they need to occupy, and how they're going to operationalize and make their practice work, how they're going to file things, how they're going to save documents, how they're going to do IT or security, how they're going to, what billing software they're going to use. And to me, that seems really silly because a lawyer's best use of his time is doing what they do best. And I think that's any industry, whether you're in tech or law or accounting or any kind of services industry, your best use of time is doing what you're trained and skilled at doing and not doing things like human resources and finance. So lawyerless operations means that lawyers don't actually manage the day-to-day operations. They manage law and doing law, but they don't manage anything else. And that's sort of a unique take on the practice. And it's made the firm, again, much more scalable and efficient. And then finally, this utopian funnel. And the idea behind the utopian funnel is that a lawyer's day, typically, and you can look, there's something called Legal Trends Report that gets published every year. And there's another one from ALTA or ATLA, the American Trial Lawyers Association, that talks about how much time a lawyer typically dedicates to law, to billing clients and working on law practice and getting new clients a day, and compares that with how much time they spend on deciding where desks go, fixing their computer, dealing with sort of administrative things that lawyers shouldn't have to deal with. And the average in a small practice is 1.2 to 1.8 hours of law practice per day. Now, in reality, it's taking them 10 to 12 hours a day in the office so they can get 4 or 5 billable hours. But our firm's goal is that you spend 4 or 5 billable hours, and 4 of those hours are billable, or at least valuable to you. You're generating new clients or dealing with something that a lawyer has to do and not these other things. So that utopian funnel is getting rid of that choking of the funnel. And that results in not only an efficient practice, but a really competitive practice because it doesn't cost as much for us to practice law because we don't have all this wasted time. So, and how do we do that? So next slide, please. So this is just, again, this is backdrop, but we looked at all of the things that we did in the practice of law, such as like writing your time down. And you might be shocked, but most lawyers and most law firms, even today, hands record their time on paper, at least if they've been practicing law for 10 years or more. And then they give it to a staff person, or they themselves go back and retype it all in. And so how do we solve that? We had to come up with a billing and management software, and we looked at a bunch of different solutions. We settled on one that had an iPhone app, an Android app that you could dictate into if you wanted to. So we tried to think of all the things that made it inconvenient for lawyers to capture their time. And there's some AI functions. So when you send an email, it records a time entry into a client matter, things like that. But all the ways that we could get lawyers who were used to traditional methods of practice and traditional ways of doing things, what was the easiest way to transform them? In other words, let's not force them, hey, we're going to make you log into this cloud website every time, and that's the only way you can put your time in. Let's see if we can approach this 5 or 6 different ways and give them as many tools as we can to make the transformation easy. So another example, paper files. So every law practice over the last 19 years that we've acquired had storerooms of boxes, just reams and reams of paper for client files. As soon as a practice joins our practice, or we acquire that practice, or whatever you want to call it, we take all of their files and we scan them in, and we OCR documents that look like they need to be OCR'd. But for the most part, we scan every document in, and things we don't have to save, if they're not original documents, we shred them. And that's reduced our storage cost, and that's reduced a massive amount of things that we have to deal with as lawyers, and has allowed us to, and I'll quickly summarize because I'm running up on the end of my presentation time. But what has it done? It lets me, for example, and this is a pitch to new partners when they come in. You can sit, and I sit in my house in Puerto Rico, not now because of COVID, but I'll sit in my house in Puerto Rico and I can practice law with my iPhone and a keyboard, just like any other lawyer in the world can practice law sitting at their desk with their 2 monitors, their laptop, and their staff and their file cabinet. Because my file cabinet, my keyboard, my billing software, everything is all in one place in the cloud. Now, it's still in multiple applications. We're working on that, but really, that allowed us during this COVID-19 epidemic, and the older lawyers in the firm, 60, 70-year-old attorneys, have commented over and over again the last couple months how amazing it is that they were able to just keep practicing law without a blip. And our firm has the same or better amount of work and effort and billing that we had this time last year. So not a blip in the practice. And that I largely attribute to our successful digital transformation, which we did for other reasons. So it worked out. So I think that's my time. I'm going to hand it back to John, but thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Tom. We have one question here. So a lot of folks, when they're working remotely, they're concerned about security. What measures have you taken to ensure that, as a law firm, of course, you're in compliance, and that the information that you're sharing or working on is secure?
So a couple of things. So the interesting thing is that we were also already there. By virtue of not having paper files, a lot of law firms have to store paper files under lock and key in file cabinets because, perhaps with the exception of estate planning and some real estate documents, with those few exceptions, all of our documents have been digitized quite some time ago. And we have a very highly secure cloud server, Azure, SharePoint system that we use. And then we have protocols. So the other thing that we do is we use a wiki, a firm-wide wiki called Confluence, that allows us to not only have things like institutional knowledge that we share without having that single point of failure, that office manager who knows everything. It's all in our firm wiki, which is updated daily, but we can deploy security training. So we probably every 2 months, we do anti-phishing tests on our firm attorneys. So we've already kind of had those things in place. It's what we've had to focus on instead of physical security, like most firms, is digital security and combining that with practical measures for people who may be working remotely. In other words, making sure that your passwords are secure and that computers are shut off or locked when you step away from your laptop when you're not sitting in the office. Actually, we have that protocol in the office too. So yeah, I think it's probably pretty standard stuff for most of the people watching, but for law firms, it's good and sort of unique and new.
Sure. Okay. Well, thanks very much. That's very interesting. Appreciate your time, Tom. And
Sure.
those of you who submitted questions and weren't able to have the question asked during this session, you'll have some time at the very end to ask questions. So I'd like to bring over Borzou. So just briefly, Borzou established the Falcon Lab nearly 20 years ago. He has transformed the business from a small family print shop to a full-service creative agency. Not only does he oversee the day-to-day operations, but he works tirelessly to grow the agency and empower the team to achieve their shared vision. He's built a roster that supports clients from small business startups to Fortune 50 companies. His leadership and passion is reflective in every client, bringing endless energy, creativity, and entertaining Insta stories to every day. Relationships are everything to Borzou, and many people he works with also call him his friend, call them their friend. Born and raised in Northern Virginia, he is a rare native to this area. He's an active member of the Tyson's Partnership Sustainability Council and Entrepreneurs Organization. When he's not working, he's either spending time with his family, traveling, or trying to make the world a better place, ideally all three at once. Borzou, take it away.
Hey everyone, thank you for having me. I was really tempted to say our experience of going virtual was unique, but it's funny, the more you hear other entrepreneurs talk about it, the more you realize your business is not a beautiful and unique snowflake, and we're all kind of going through the same stuff. It was actually really interesting to hear Tom's story about how he did it with his law firm. That does sound very far ahead of what other law firms are doing. We have many different silos to our business, which we call labs. We have a production facility where we print and manufacture everything. And then we have a digital side of the business that does like all our branding, web, and digital marketing work. And we thought they were too intertwined to separate. Every time we signed a new lease, we considered moving the physical production somewhere less expensive, but we just thought we weren't ready. And it turns out we were ready. One area we were fortunate was that all our technology was already cloud-based. Our MIS invoicing, all our client files were on the cloud. We had voice over IP, so we could do calls from our cell phones or laptops. We had Google Apps ready to go, so we had Hangouts, email, everything virtual, could be accessed from anywhere. So that was something we didn't have to put a ton of additional time into, but we had not been prepared really to run virtually and have everyone separate. We thought we weren't ready. Turns out we were. And I think that's like a common entrepreneurial process, right? Like a thought process that you think you're not ready, and like you're waiting for the right time or the right staff or the right funding to kind of make things happen. And when you just kind of decide that it's time, or in this case, it got decided for us, you're able to make it happen. And that's really what we did. So with most of the technology squared away, we just took all our existing processes and workflow and moved it virtually. The one kind of shift we made technology-wise is we had to dive deeper into our project management system. We've always used it for like long-term recurring projects, but now everything had to go in because we were virtual and like couldn't check in on each other quickly. Any task, any priority really had to be put in, assign a due date, and assign someone to be responsible to it. We're an essential business, so production was able to stay open, but we staggered schedules, and we do have a couple people still coming in who do have to work here, but 90% of our staff went virtual on basically 24 hours notice. One thing we did change from a process perspective is we have a all hands on morning huddle, which should be a best practice even if you're in the same space. But for us, it's a quick 15-minute check-in, big win for the last 24 hours, top priorities for the day, and anything you're stuck on. This has been instrumental in A, making sure we're aligned on priorities, but B, catching when people are stuck on something, especially something they think they can fix, right? So if someone's stuck on a task, they might spend 2, 3, 4 days trying to figure it out before they ask for help. Whereas if it comes up in the huddle, you know, we can address it right away and hopefully keep them moving, which has been a great experience for us. Otherwise, there are a lot of advantages to working remotely, we've discovered. Our office is really fun, which is cool, and it has a lot of exciting things going on all the time, which is great unless you need to bang out a lot of work, right? When we have several hours of deep work or projects to grind on, it's harder to focus on that. And so we're making really nice headway on some things that we would not have been able to do as quickly, I think, if we were in the office. In terms of the scope of work that we're doing, the vast majority of our production work was for events or face-to-face sales, and that's obviously all gone, at least probably till the end of the year. We've been fortunate enough to be able to get creative with the production side of the business. We're doing virtual events for some people, where we'll send all the would-be attendees a branded box with some product, some swag, maybe like a wine, single-serve wine bottle or airplane liquor bottle. And some people are sending their employees like Netflix and chill baskets, where it's a branded blanket and a thing of popcorn, or just things to keep the culture alive and let them know you still care about them. Otherwise, lots of social distancing signs, floor graphics, branded masks, open house boxes for realtors, and a lot of PPP in general. The digital side of our house has been slammed. Sorry, our office is very energy efficient. The digital side of our business has been slammed we decided to redo all our marketing, right? So we're going to have a new site launching next month. We're redoing our systems, retraining our people, updating our internal processes. So we're really ready to go when things pop off again. Apparently everyone else thinks this is a good idea too. We have several rebrands in the works, several new sites, and a few marketing retainers of people that are gearing up, pushing out content for COVID. And that's really what I think everyone should be working on. In the 20s, Post was the biggest cereal company in the country, and they cut their advertising over the Great Depression, which is like a natural reaction. But Kellogg's doubled theirs and became the category leader for decades. If you have the cash to spend on marketing, ads, SEO to fill your pipeline, you should. If you don't, which I totally understand, you still have a lot of DIY options, and you can push out content and stay top of mind. And it's also just a great time to learn, get better at what you do, hone your skills, train your staff up. You have the bandwidth now, probably. If you don't, that's probably better for you. And it's a great time to take care of it all. Also, get in touch with your customers just to see what they're doing. Everyone's situation is different. Almost no one's is better than it was before. So you always want to lead with empathy, right? You're just reaching out. You want to talk, see how they're doing. No one really cares about your problems. They have their own, and that's okay. No one has any idea when we're going to get out of this, what the new normal will be, but everyone's kind of missing connection, and there's a lot of value in just popping in and like virtually popping in and saying hi. A lot of people are still busy though. We're obviously blessed in this area to have a lot of extra coverage with government spending. And even if you're not working with the government, like the trickle down insulates the whole area. Some industries are getting killed, obviously, mostly brick and mortar locations. And these are industries I thought were bulletproof or future proof. Gyms, barbershops, restaurants. It turns out that is not the case. Some of them are thriving though. One of our clients, Moby Dick, is creeping back up to pre-COVID levels. Real estate seems to be really busy. Most tech or SaaS companies are doing fine, and e-commerce is thriving. I don't know if you guys are familiar with bringatrailer.com. It's a website that sells high-end collectible cars. And if anyone would have seen a dip, I would have thought it was them, but they're seeing traffic increase. They're seeing car prices increase. People are sitting at home. They have cash to spend somehow, and they're finding ways to spend it. One of the best pieces of advice I got coming up was you don't have to worry about how big the pie is, just the size of the piece that you get. So there's definitely still a lot of opportunity out there, and I don't want to be cavalier about it, but the stuff that we're seeing happen was probably going to happen anyway. This shift to remote, the buying patterns, it probably would have taken 10 or 20 years to happen without a global pandemic. But you know, there's a meme going around that that said, I guess we're going to find out if that meeting could have been an email. And it turns out a lot of the stuff we were doing can be done virtually, can be done quicker, and not all of that is bad. Some businesses are not going to make it through this. Some new ones are going to be born. There's a lot of opportunity at the moment, and everyone just has to kind of keep an eye out, see what's good, see what's available. If your business does not seem to be thriving in this area, maybe it's time to pivot. I've seen a lot of people do a lot of creative things to try to survive this situation. When we do return to some kind of normalcy, I personally will consider it a wasted opportunity if my life just goes back to the way it was before. I'm hoping to make some big improvements at the company and my own life, continue to spend more time with my kids, which I've been able to do now. And that's my time. Thanks,
Great.
guys.
Thank you, Borzou. Just one question we have. I know that you have a strong culture there at the Falcon Lab. How have you been able to maintain it with technology, working remotely, or any other way, any other strategies?
So I think the huddle's been a huge part of it, right? So we do have the huddle with everyone every morning. So we all get to check in, see each other, see how everyone's doing. We're also getting into the sending everyone stuff as part of our rebrand. We're making real new swag and everything. And otherwise, we just check in a lot, right? We keep content high. We're on Slack, right? So we're always chatting with each other. Our culture was good and authentic to begin with, right? A lot of our employees would hang out outside of work and do stuff together anyway. So that's definitely helped for the most part. If you met someone who worked here and didn't know they worked here and like an hour into the conversation found out, you'd be like, yeah, of course, that's where they work. So I think that all helps, but it's just a lot of check-ins. It's a lot of content. And even if it's virtual face-to-face, I think it helps.
All right, well, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So you'll have a chance to ask more questions of Borzou at the very end of our panel discussions. And now I'd like to bring on Dan Nuzilis. He is the president and CTO of Coras. Coras is an enterprise decision management solution for portfolios and programs that visualizes the relationships and the impacts of your decisions, allowing you to make quality decisions faster. Dan is the driving force behind Coras's mission to provide enterprise portfolio management software and platforms that evolve at the speed of customers' business. Dan's leadership at Coras reflects his business agility mindset, embracing teamwork, sprints, and limited meetings. His objective is to bring agility into practice for Coras's clients, supporting business agendas and providing customer-centric solutions to management problems at every level. Dan will speak about how Coras, through the years, has used technology in emergency and crisis situations. So Dan, without further ado, you can take it away.
Great. Thank you very much, John. So I guess first and foremost, thank you very much for your time today. I hope that we can leave you with some knowledge and things that we're learning as we go. Coras is a software company that started back in 2003. We've sold both commercial and federal. We have strong federal presence. And so we do a lot with the Department of Defense and other agencies that we work with here locally in the DC area. So what I'd like to do is kind of talk a little bit about how do you think in a time of COVID? So if we look at it from a perspective of your business, right? We were going along, we sell a decision management platform, and for us, that's incredibly important. So you can imagine for a moment, the most difficult decisions that you can actually have to solve, like how do you fight a war 30 years from now against people that you don't know what they're going to do, and be able to put all the right pieces together all along the way to make this jigsaw puzzle come together so that you never lose, because if you lose, all of a sudden, we're no longer the United States of America, we're doing something else. So that's a really important kind of topic. And how do you make that kind of decision? Well, there's so many connections to those decisions that are made. You have so many relationships where you have people who, you know, say an aircraft carrier, say for the Navy, and then from that you have people and you have training and you have ships that are, or planes that are going to land on it. And there's 5 and 6 and 7th order consequences to every decision that you make. So that was the mission at which we were doing. We're doing that at a top level. We're doing it at program levels. We're working with people on how to make budgets, how to help inform those budgets to ensure that everything's aligned to the mission that you're trying to do. And we're building a really cool software tech. It runs in the cloud, it runs on premises, right? It's multi-tenant, all that great stuff. And we're focused on those problems. And then all of a sudden, the world changes for us. But the reality is, it didn't just change for us. It really changed for our clients. So we did what everybody else did. You know, we sent everybody home. People started working from home. Being a gov tech company, a software company that has software products, we actually are a company that kind of lends itself to being more remote anyway. Most of our people do development, and development is a solo activity in a lot of ways, even though there's a ton of collaboration around it. So we had used tools all along the way, like the Zooms, or, you know, even all the way back to the live meetings of the world, right? And the web, you know, the WebExes and all those types of tools. We've used them kind of religiously to do huddles every day and talk them up, you know, issues and come back to that. But what we were able to do is actually able to kind of repivot to that as a company, but also really ask ourselves, should we be in the same business? Should we be doing the same things that we were doing prior to COVID? And the answer is yes, but. So as we're working with one of our large accounts and we're trying to solve their decision management, data management needs around how they run their business in general, we started hearing from them, and also a partner of ours, a company called Pivotal Insights out of Arlington, that the challenge that they were running into that was getting in the way of us being able to get their time was that for the first time in their life, they had to pivot. The Navy specifically had to take and actually start thinking about putting people into their own houses. Now you got to realize there's classification of data. Not everybody can actually work out of their house. So now you've got to bring people into the building no matter what. Some of those people might actually have been in the government 35, 40 years. They may not be in a healthy spot to be able to take and deal with that, with the consequences of it. So how do we know who can bring in? How do we cover the critical feature functions that are there? what's getting done when we manage everything through interconnections, personal meetings, handshakes, people being in front of people. So we actually heard that, and between ourselves and our partners, what we really got was that was more important to them at that moment, was to solve that problem than what we were really doing for them. So we pivoted, we took our platform, we looked and said, what is the most important? And that was planning out and making sure everything was covered, scheduling everything to ensure that they met their mission. They had done a really good job working with our partner of laying out their products, their mission to their products to their daily activity, and at least having the map down of what it is that they wanted to do. So let's take that as a basis and let's pull that in and allow them to plan all those activities that need to get done, something that they didn't do necessarily, make sure that all the people's time and activities are being captured so we can see, we think people are covering these things, but are they? And what are they really doing, right? And then be able to deal with things like parking passes and, you know, connections to the internet. And some people didn't even have laptops or computers. Some of the people literally had no computers at home because they always worked at the office. So if you think of that for a moment, Coras has pivoted. So if you go to the next slide. And what we did is we built a really simple solution for them that's actually probably more powerful than anything else we could have done at that moment in time. And that is make it dirt simple to be able to come in and plan out what it is and see coverage and be able to get reporting out of that tells them that everything that they have to get done is covered, because we can't not have a military, right? And then make it really simple for the users to be able to come in and capture what they're doing based on that plan. And then from that, obviously do reporting off of it to ensure. And that's called a daily muster. Where is everybody at today? They do that in a crisis. The military is very good at crisis management, right? So how do we take and ensure that we actually have people in the right places at the right time, getting the right things done, and not miss a beat in the process, even though we're having one of the biggest cultural transformations ever in almost no time. So this is an example to me of not only the client being able to look at how they do things differently, they obviously had to, they had no choice, but also to look at your business and say, this wasn't necessarily the solution we were trying to build for anybody. It wasn't what we were taking to market, but it's also something that was really, really important to our customers. So we talked and we listened. And much like some of the people said earlier, if you listen to your customers, there's opportunity that you didn't see. And this is incredibly interesting to everyone in the marketplace of the DoD especially, because they all have the same problem. So it's opened up huge opportunity for us as a company. Next slide, please. The other thing we've done is we've taken over the time and looked at this disaster recovery and kind of warfighting area where we're in situations where it's no longer a easy place to go out and do things, you know, kind of more personally, right? So we actually worked with another partner, Verizon, and they've focused a lot around disaster recovery, around, you know, the warfighter and those types of pieces, and trying to make sure that they have a network that can actually respond to challenges that the client has, or the users have. And so here we're focused on mission planning and flight operations and workflows, but tying it into something like, for instance, drones that are actually going out and dropping plasma to somebody who might be injured, might be dying, right? So some medic can actually treat them in the field, even though it might not be safe to get to them. Let's say Hurricane Michael had hit, you know, Tyndall Air Force Base, for instance. So if we look at that, if we go to the next slide, what we did on that is similar kind of approach. Take and look at this. We use, of course, our technology in the process, but technology does nothing if it doesn't solve real world problems, and do it in a way that makes it simple enough for people to be able to get the value out of quickly. So here we tied into the Verizon network. We tied into the fact that they had partners that had drones, and we were able to basically pull together a holistic solution that actually allowed the drone operator to be able to put a mission together, actually create a location path, get that off of a cell phone, be able to trace what assets they were going to send out there, what supplies, and that it got done, and that it got to closure, and that they actually solved the challenge. In the case of this one would be something like dropping plasma to somebody and they actually save their life. And then maybe behind that, a helicopter to actually come in and take them and rescue them. So I'd say if you look at each of these, and you go to the next slide, please. If you look at each of these solutions, what we're doing is we're trying to work not only by ourselves, because technology isn't something that you can, it's not a single person's game. It's a thing that we do in teams, to bring technology together to truly solve needs as they arise in real time. And by doing that, we're able to actually help our business by being responsive to what we're seeing in the marketplace. I believe strongly that there are opportunities that have presented themselves to every one of us today that we can take advantage of to either increase business from where you were or close gaps for challenges that you have. And there will be new business opportunities as we transition from being in this pandemic to being out of this pandemic. You know, much like a 9/11, companies, you know, grew tremendously around that if they looked at the right opportunities there.
So thank you very much, Dan. Just one question for you. As a government contractor, and the fact that technology means that maybe some of the government folks that you've been working with, they might be working from home. How has that changed the dynamic? Oftentimes you may be visiting them at their place of business, which is of course the business of the American people. How has that changed the dynamic?
So that's an awesome question. And I'd call us GovTech, by the way. So we're really a software company that works with the client and partners as well. So, but said that, we, for the first time, are able to communicate with our clients using technologies like we're doing right now. Before that, you couldn't, in say the Pentagon or on a base, necessarily access these tools. So they didn't know that this world existed, kind of like the law firm earlier today. And so it was really difficult. We literally had to get in a car and drive down, say, to Pax River, which, by the way, is a very long drive from the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, and go down and see our clients every time we wanted to talk to them and show them something. We could obviously have a telephone call, but if we wanted to actually demonstrate something to them, you know, understand a problem they were having, we couldn't see a screen. We had to literally drive down there. So for us, it's transformed our relationships with our clients. And we've actually probably doubled our productivity by working with clients because they can actually talk to us in a 1 hour slot or a 30-minute slot, show us something, and we can get it back to them quickly, where that may have taken me an entire day before. So I believe coming out of this, that the guys that are doing that, the people that are in part of that, they're going to see that their productivity is so much better and their ability to accomplish things, that I think we've totally changed the way they think as well. And so I think it's really powerful. I think you'll see the government being able to utilize these tools in safe ways as they go forward, as they've had to figure it out now.
Thanks. That's a very interesting perspective for our GovTech companies here in Fairfax County. Appreciate it.
No problem.
So
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. And now we'll move on to the last presentation. Christopher Antonopoulos is the founder and CEO of Measured Results Marketing, a marketing and sales technology services provider that works with businesses to create a demand generation ecosystem. He's working with companies in Fairfax County like Sonatype and Uninet. Technology is a key way that Christopher has been able to grow his business and that of his clients. Today, Christopher will now share his insights on technology with us in a brief presentation. Take it away, Christopher.
Well, thanks for having me today. I really want to focus on things that you can use for your business, adapt based on the environment they're in, share things that some of our clients have done, and some technology I think that'll make it a bit more efficient for you to manage with potentially less budget or less resources you have as an organization. This is my contact information. Again, happy to help. We feel very fortunate that we've been in online business from the start. If you need help figuring these things out, I'm happy to walk you through that. If you move to the next slide. So I think when COVID started, I think the two main priorities that companies have were, how do I retain the clients that I have, and how do I still focus on acquiring new clients, even though I may have industries. I think Borzou did a particularly good job of talking about specific industries that are challenged and companies that are doing well. And so if you are an affected business or they were your clients, you had to quickly figure out, how do you move to a place where your service offerings is something that someone has money to fund and invest in. So I think the things that we've done and how technology has helped a bit is, one, for prospecting. I think you have to get a lot more focused on industries, companies that you want to sell to, and using a database, whether that's an Excel spreadsheet, a CRM system, really focusing on the types of companies that will invest in you and using technology to organize that. I think the second thing, and I'm sure all of us have experienced this, is transitioning clients and helping them fully sell online. You know, this meeting, we would probably had something at the Fairfax County Government Center where everyone was invited and we would all meet each other and meet face to face. But I think, you know, it's fundamentally changed how you sell, both cadence of follow-up. Since you're not meeting people in person, you're having to use all of these different tools. So there's one called Crystal as an example, where you can look at someone's profile online and understand how to sell to them based on their personality type. And so, you know, thinking about how you use the tools to learn about someone, their personality and interests, things that you would know about them if you met them in person, but getting all of that information upfront online so you can have a valuable conversation or a good way to connect to them because you're not meeting them first in person. And I think the last piece is, it sounds pretty scary, but the other big piece is really evaluating where you are and figuring out, do I need to switch markets? You know, what services can I offer that are valuable to another industry? So we worked with a company whose sole business was to help restaurants launch. And so they're wondering, you know, there's not many new restaurants launching. Most of the stats say that 2 out of every 5 restaurants that exist today, I should say only 2 in 5 restaurants that exist today will actually survive this economic time. And so we actually talked to them, and it turns out that higher education, online learning is a really good market. It's still online marketing, identifying specific segments. It's an industry that's also particularly behind the times. I think one of the colleagues on this call talked about the legal industry in that piece, but they've now switched their business to focus on K through 12 online learning and have acquired a whole new set of customers using the same set of skills that they have working with their clients today. So let's go to the next, if you can move to the next slide, John. So I want to talk about things you can use technology for or what is particularly effective in doing. So, you know, one is narrowing down lists to best prospects, people who are engaging with you online or engaging with content that demonstrates an interest in your product and services. I think getting rid of repetitive tasks. I think, you know, before it was sort of nice to have technology where you had a templated email, an automated response if someone filled out a form. I think now using that as a necessity and also collecting more information. So if someone fills out a form and says, here's my first name, last name, email address, and they have a request for product information, you can write them back with another form and request more information about them. Or with this technology, look at where they came from, company type, and learn all of that information that's automatically put in your system without having to manually research it. Online meeting software, we're sort of doing that today. I think, you know, scheduling meetings and those pieces, you know, it's much more of a online or automated function compared to what that was before. You know, Calendarly, a whole host of those pieces. And then the other big thing is notifications. So understanding when someone contacts you online, that they visited your website, that they downloaded a proposal, having those online notifications, because you can't physically see that person, meet them for lunch, ask them how things are going. You need to use that technology to get people organized. And then to the last slide, John. So I wanted to put, yeah, there's a lot of free resources and software out there. This is not an exhaustive list, but you know, it's really looking at what you accomplished in person, those repetitive and manual tasks, and what can you use technology to be more efficient with. We have a tech assessment. If you want us to look under the hood, this is a free evaluation of your systems. There's a lot of free tools. A lot of companies use tools like free HubSpot, where it's a free database where you can track all of your activities, send out emails and do the pieces. Zoom, I think we're actually on a Zoom conference today, automating proposals. And then, video training and sales prospecting. So one of the things we found particularly effective is recording a 15 to 20-second video that we actually send prospects or send people we want to connect with. We're finding that those get between a 40 and 50% open rate, and a pretty effective way to build relationships when you don't know the person or when you're trying to build out from scratch. So I went through that rather quickly. The point here is I want you to have some useful resources. If you need help making that transition or need help for tools, reach out to me on LinkedIn or directly. They're happy to help you get a bit more efficient and take advantage of some of the technology that we've got.
Thanks very much, Christopher. So one question that came to us is what, through your experience, what industries, sectors do you feel have been able to make a very effective pivot with digital marketing and utilizing technology to grow sales during this very different time?
Yeah, I think a lot of the impacted ones. I would say that Borzou talking about brick and mortar stores where you have to order online. I think a lot of restaurants have been starting to be effective in terms of carry out and delivery from those perspectives. Yeah, I think most of the tech companies have done particularly well depending on their audience. And I gave that example of the one that did marketing for restaurants has now moved to education. But I think restaurants, brick and mortar, are doing a pretty good job of it. I think tech companies, the big realization was, they're doing a good job if they've identified other industries that they can sell to. I think the ones that are challenged is that they are trying to hold on or survive COVID, and hopefully the world will turn back to where it was before March. And so if you are selling to an industry that is not purchasing or doesn't have a particularly bright future, now's the time to really think about how to switch or how to adapt. I didn't quite answer that, John, but I think it's the companies who are adjusting verticals that are doing well are the ones that are adapting. But if you were selling to any industry that relies on people physically coming into your store and haven't changed your model, you sort of have to adapt.
It looks like we're coming up to a break right now. If you have questions for the panelists, you can enter them in the Q&A box at the very bottom of the screen, and we'll make sure that they get those questions and they're able to answer them. But I would really like to thank the panel for their excellent presentations today and thoughtful answers to the questions. And if you ever want to get in contact with them, certainly let us know and we can make the connection. So if you were here, we could do a round of applause, but since this is a virtual, you can do a virtual round of applause, and really appreciate your time. Thank you all, Tom, Borzou, Dan, and Christopher, for making time to make some presentations to us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you, John. Those were really good presentations. And like John said, if you do have questions for this panel that you just heard, you can still put them in the Q&A box, even though we're going to go on break. And we will make sure that the panelists get back to you with answers. So like I said, I'm ready for a cup of coffee. I hope you are too. We're going to take another break until 10:15 for a very relevant panel on the future of workforce. So we will go to break till 10:15 US Eastern Time, which is about 11 minutes from now. See you then.